Anybody? So we are in sprint 2, right? That's what I believe.
Yes.
Okay, and we have completed the last topic, that was dynamic cell access, DCA. Correct?
Yes.
Okay, and just give me a break. We have completed delete from list using selection, right?
Yes, we have completed.
Yes, Abhishek, we have.
Okay, good. Just give me a second. All right, so today we're going to be just starting off with front to back model designing process. So it's going to be a little theoretical, so just bear with me on that. So it is more like an idea which we need to understand, and an approach like what should be our steps involved, or what should we be doing as soon as we get any specific requirement as such. Now, what does that mean is, if you have a requirement, like this is like a little extension of the topic which we did discuss in L1 as well, that was front to back model designing. So over there, we did had a understanding where like we must be building a dashboard first, then we must be building the modules, and as soon as we build the modules, we do understand the underlying dimensions which is possibly gonna be included over there. So that's what we have been discussing in past as well, and we are just going to be emphasizing a little more on the next steps involved. So if I just talk about model designing process entirely, at first you do have the user requirements, that's we already know. Then probably we plan the end user requirements. Now when I say we plan the end user requirements, probably I'm emphasizing on the fact, like, you know, we do discuss about how the UX or things like what the end user needs at the last, your dashboard or anything as such, that has to be discussed. Ultimately, if you do get an understanding, like, you know, how your UX is going to be designed, you also need to understand like what are the final output of the model. For instance, when I say, like, you know, you should be having an idea like how the UX should be designed, that's ultimately you are trying to understand, or you're ultimately trying to predict or conclude what could be the final output of this specific model in turn. And as soon as you have an understanding, like, you know, what could be the final output of the model underlying, you need to understand like is there any input which is needed from the user. So that's more like, do you need any input modules over there? And then once you have that understanding, you will probably be looking or gazing over the calculations, that is the modules area which we already discussed. That is, you need to understand like what could be the calculation you need to transform the data. And one thing that is, then you need to conclude like what could be the possible model schema. Now what this model schema is, let me quickly show you guys. I think we haven't seen that area yet. Let me log into my workspace. So just sharing my screen. All right, so like I mentioned, the first steps user requirement. Second could be planning the end user experience, that is the dashboard. The third could be what output model needed. I mean, what is the output which ultimately you want from the specific model. Then obviously you need to understand like what could be the available data that you need to support this particular model, then input from the end user, what possible if needed, then what type of calculation you need to perform to transform the data, and ultimately you need to understand or discuss about the creation of your model schema. And obviously you do know that when you talk about the model schemas and all that stuff, we do follow the disco approach. Now there's a one option out here beside your gearbox, that is this one. So when you click in this option, you ultimately see the model schema, which is existing. So this one is your level one model build, level one model, which are whatever we have built. That's this quick schema for that. So what this schema is already, it's like what Anaplan does is whatever you create into the system. Okay, so whatever you do out here, Anaplan will by default, create this schema in the backend, which you can come up and see it at any stage. Now, how this could be helpful? Suppose you have a huge model and maybe you want to understand that model. Okay, let's take it from the perspective like you have to support that model. Okay, now if you have anything like that, and obviously you will get some design documents and whatever you can go through, read through that. And ultimately, from the Anaplan perspective, if you can see this schema, it's going to be little helpful in the way, like, it can help you to understand, like, what could be the possible module or how things are to be governed or interconnected over here. So if you just have a quick look, we have, for an example, 606 product details module. And if you see these, lines going on ultimately to Rep02 size margin reports, it's more like, it's helping me to understand, like, there's some relation between 602 and Rep02 size margin report. And similarly in 10, if I see 606 product details, I see these lines going into Rev05 price growth rate staging. So what does that mean is there's going to be some sort of relation between 602, or when I say some sort of relation, it ideally means it has been referred in your Rev05 price growth rate staging modules and so on. So that's how the schemas could be. If you just, maybe zoom in a little, even you can see like, what are the possible dimensions and the line items which are being used in this module itself. So for an example, 604 location details, you can conclude like, G3 location is the dimension and code, country, and region are the line items over there. So you see this FX symbol. This FX is ultimately for your line item, this symbol which you see. I mean, it's more related that these are the formulas, and you have this G2 country, which is acting as a dimension over there. So that is how your model schema is already built, developed. And if you just want to have a quick idea about what is being developed, you can just come in and walk through over here. Now, there could be a possible another question like, how you can plan end user experience for each role. So ultimately, if you have to do something like this, you need to understand the business process which is there. Then ultimately you can identify the user role. So for an example, like, if an HR person is there, and if you have to predict or, conclude like what is possibly his end user experience. So you need to understand like, what are the business process related with the HR. You need to identify the role of an HR. Then possibly Anaplan suggests like, you can review and document process of each role. And maybe if possible, you can ask to sketch the DB view they would like to see. But this is like, to be honest, it's more theoretical side. It doesn't go into the, practical that much. But at the end of the day, that's what Anaplan just tries to suggest and maybe have a little overview on how we can plan as end user experience for each and specific role which we come across through. So that was a quick discussion on front to back model designing, which I wanted to discuss. So that's what was there. We're going to be moving to the another topic. I mean, I understand the last topic was a little theoretical, so nothing much over there. So we're going to be moving to the another topic. Just give me a second. All right, we're going to be moving to our next topic, and that is a select function. Okay, so we are going to be discussing about the select. In past, we did had an understanding and we discussed about the sum and lookup function before. So this is like a little extension of how to refer the data from one module to another. So obviously the one way was sum, other was lookup, and there is an extension, and that is your select function out there. So if I just talk a brief overview about this select function, it allows us to write more detailed formula that apply to one item from list or a dimension. Just reiterating myself once again. So your select function allow us to write more detailed formula that apply to one item from list or dimension instead of a formula that applies to all items in a list. Now, if you remember, like when we were working with sum and lookup, okay, so in a sum and lookup, whenever we were doing any referencing that was for an entire dimension, that was for an entire set of data. But in contrary, if you talk about this this select function, it's going to be very, very specific and will only point to the specific dimension member or a specific member or line item, whatever you select. So it could be made sure that, whatever referencing you are doing, that is restricted to only one member as such. If I just tell a few more examples of scenarios, or I mean concrete points related with the select function, like I mentioned, it's going to be pointing to specific data, and obviously in turn it allows user to write formula to one item from a list or dimension. Like I mentioned, we'll see, like, what does that mean when you point to only one member. And obviously in turn we say, like, using a select function is not a best thing which you can do. I mean, that could be a peculiar thing to say at this point of time, like, though there is something like select function, but that has to be avoided as much as possible. You shouldn't be, using this select function much, because it's more like, you are hard coding the stuff out here, and in turn you affect the sustainability of model. Okay, we'll see how does this happen. And it's more like the hard and fast rule. You should be avoiding use of select as much as possible. As in turn, I mentioned it's going to be affecting the sustainability of the model. So if I just go through this model, which I already created in the past, maybe I am pretty sure you guys do remember this model that is referencing in modules where we learn some lookup together and direct referencing. You guys remember, right?
Yes.
Yes, we remember.
Yes, Akshay.
All right. So over there, if you just a quick overview of the dimensions which was there was, regions, there were products were on two levels, regions were on three levels. There was a pack type and a pack size, and then we had something like color. And then we had a little bit of, referencing from here and there based upon the dimensions of different modules underlying. So we are going to be using this space itself for, our understanding of select function as well. So first of all, we are going to be just moving, or we are going to be just observing the data staging module, which is there. So I believe this is our data staging module, which we were using, and this is probably showing us the data on the basis of product and geography. All right, so this is our module underlying, and just give me a second. And what we're going to be doing is like, we're going to be creating one other module, probably. Suppose I'm just going to be copying this module, maybe. Just naming it select. I'll tell you why. And maybe I'm just going to be removing one of the dimension. And I'll just delete these unnecessarily line items out there. Right, so I just deleted the unnecessary line items. Okay, and right now we have the data which are based upon the G2 country. Even I just removed everything. So currently, what data I have in this module is like, you have the underlying total sales on the basis of, just give me a second, guys. So currently, if I just have a quick look over this module, like I mentioned, it's going to be based upon only the G2 countries, and there's a line item that is total sales. I'm just going to bringing it over here. So if I just assume how this select function is going to be used, first of all, we're going to be just trying to do a direct referencing the way we always, try to explore this area. And obviously, at this point of time, what data I have is the aggregated data, aggregated sales data of maybe China or maybe another countries over here. Okay, it's not dimensionalized on the basis of products out here. So pretty much I can understand, like, there's a dimension that is a product dimension, which is missing out here. Now, possible next steps or next action, what I need to do is maybe I am looking for the datas which are based upon the edibles, or maybe I want to see the data of rice out here. So I just want to see the total sales of rice specifically. Mind you guys, the difference over here is the way we are looking over things is we are not talking about I want to see the data on the basis of product, but like I mentioned, the pointer for your select function, that is going to be allowing you to write a formula to one item from a list or dimension. So one item is possibly here is your in turn like your rice, and what you want is like the total sales to be present here on the basis of rice or on the basis of any specific line item or any specific member as such. Now, just to fulfill this, the select formula is going to be pretty similar the way the syntax is written, and that is select, and then you can just go to the target module, source module, my bad. You need to go to the source module, and then you click on the member. I type in the select, and like I mentioned, maybe I am just looking forward to understand like what's there gonna be total sales of rice. So in turn, what you have done is like we just typed in a select formula, and we are just single clicking on that member. And then if I just close this, so over here, though we didn't have any dimension that is like the product, but the data which we are going to be seeing over here is specifically for the member of the P2 product, and that is your rice out there. All right, so you can pretty much understand, like, you are just selected in one members out here. Similarly, I mean, if you just want to select in like maybe something else, maybe you just want to select the P1 product category edibles, even that you can do. So what you see over here is you are more importantly just selecting in the members from a list or a line item or a module. So even if you want, you can select it directly going into the list, maybe P2 products out here. So I just went to the list directly here, P2 products and bread. And the data which I see here is going to be underlying for the P2 products and breads in turn out here. So over here, what you see is you are just hard coding one of the member related to what you need the specific data in your target module. So suppose in turn you needed it for bread, you selected in the bread. But if you would have used lookup instead, okay? So here, if you would be using the lookup, so what happens in that case, you probably refer to the entire line item, right? You refer to the entire dimension, instead, when you are using a select, you are just using in the exact member out here. So that's how your, select works. And if I just show you a little bit of problem associated with select, suppose, like I mentioned, it affects the sustainability of a model. How it affects sustainability? Let's take an example, like you have this P2 products, and you have written in the formula like this, okay? And maybe I'll just mention it like sales rice by geography. That's what we have been seeing here, right? Okay, bread. Let me change it to bread. So you are seeing the bread data, total sales of bread on the basis of geography. Now the problem is, and why we say that select affects the sustainability. Maybe like after an year or two, this enterprise, this organization, they are not using P2 products. Okay. When I say they are not using P2 products, I mean like under the P2 products, the bread is something which they have stopped manufacturing. Okay. Now, what does that mean is when they have stopped manufacturing or the bread doesn't exist into your list, what will happen? So as soon as bread, they have stopped manufacturing, ultimately, this P2 product list will be refreshed and the member of this list, that is bread, is going to be deleted, right? Maybe next 2 years. So if I try to delete this member, what happens? It cannot be deleted because it is in use. Okay. Now, the problem is you have just created a dependency of the member specifically with one of the formulas underlying. Now, what you need to do in these type of scenarios, first of all, you need to remove this formula, then delete this member. Now, if you will be deleting, you will be pretty much able to delete this data and the data gets deleted. Now, again, the point is, now this module is of no use, correct? It's like literally garbage which is existing into the model right now. So maybe, I just need to go and delete this model, this module itself as well. And ultimately, if you think of what exactly you are doing, you just hard coded something, you remove the hard coding, then you remove the formulas, then you are deleting the module, and the entire concept or entire idea of having sales spread by geography is in vain right now. So in those terms, if you see, like, ultimately you did affect the sustainability, and that was not the best way to go on or play around with your select formulas out here. And at the same time, like your sustainability got affected when you use this select formula. So do you guys have any question related with select?
Yes, Abhishek. I had some questions.
Yeah, please tell me.
No, I think I'll park it for tomorrow. I have less time now. But select and both, it can be used with others as well, like lookup and some formulas as well.
So when you say like, you mean cascading?
Yeah, in the same formula, I was just checking one formula when it had both. Like
you can use that, but we always say like, you should be avoiding that cascading as much as possible.
Okay.
I mean, what happens, like, it's pretty much, like it will happen in any of the programming language as well. The more you cascade, the performance is worse, right?
Yes.
So that's what the idea is over here as well. We try to avoid it. But if it is something like, you can't restrict, or there's the last option which you have to do at the end of the day, then maybe you do. But again, if I would have been in your place, or what I would be suggesting, you use multiple line items instead, cascading it. Mm-hmm. Any other question?
And in the select itself, we have this year to date and month to date. It's like aggregating those values, right? We can do that same thing.
Yeah, correct. So I think that's the topic which is going to be there in your learning one.
Yeah.
So there in the select formula, yeah, like, what happens, like, you can aggregate it on the basis of the actual period, current period, Y2D, Y2G, and on the basis of all periods. So it is more like you mentioned, it's aggregation, or it's working on the basis of the time periods involved. So Anaplan is smart enough to understand those time periods, okay, by that definition. As soon as you are going to be writing like select time dot all periods, select time dot Y2G, select time dot Y2G, right? So what happens? It's going to be selecting on the basis of that time, and you can pull in the data if it's required accordingly.
In those scenarios also, it is not advisable to use select.
Select is something which is not advisable to use in any scenario. Okay. Now, but if you can't restrict, the reason being I'm telling you, when you write something like current period, okay, the idea could be more like, that's fine, you are referring to the current period, but it could be leading to some sort of a confusion, like, in sense, like the current period of the model is like when you wrote it with the idea of having it around September, and maybe someone changed the current period later, and maybe moved it to June or July. So it's going to be a little restrictive, but I mean, that's not very restrictive, to be honest, to say that you shouldn't be using select with those time periods involved. But again, like, you can use there in few of the scenarios, but ultimately the idea or the thought process should always be like, don't use this. I mean, until unless it's specific. But again, if this formula exists, obviously it's there for some sort of use, and maybe in time period or something, you can use it at some instances. But it's always better that you avoid if you have any other approach or any other thought which could be revolving around that area.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe for those time you can use, so that, logically speaking, the actual periods, current period is going to be mostly the same, but still, I mean, it's better if you avoid. Mm-hmm. Any other question, guys? Okay. So I assume we don't have any other questions. So guys, like, I don't know where you guys are in the terms of completion of your exercises, but topic wise, we are done with sprint 2, and in sprint 3, there's nothing which I have to deliver from my end. Okay. So sprint 3, I'm just reiterating, there is no topic which I need to cover from my end. Okay, there are a few topics extra, which is they're going to be in the conclusion, which I'll discuss specifically. But as part of your exercises, what you can do is you can start completing anything till sprint 3. If you feel like there's any topic which you think which needs to be discussed, or which you guys are not getting, obviously, you can tell me. We can discuss that into the session, but I'm pretty sure there will not be anything as such. And obviously, I believe, like, when you will be trying to complete these exercises, there are going to be few questions in terms of, putting in the formulas and all. So if that comes, feel free to, discuss these into the sessions. Okay. If you're stuck with any line item formula, or if you're not understanding any stuff which you are doing, so that, we don't miss out on those exercises. So, like I mentioned, we can complete anything till sprint 3. And probably I expect, like, you guys can come up with more question as such if required for that completion. So just a quick question. So sprint 1, everyone has completed, right?
No, Abhishek, I am pending.
Okay, and Ramakrishna as well, right?
Yes, Abhishek.
Okay, so Venu and Akhil have completed sprint 1, I'm sure, and you guys are in sprint 2 currently. So
Yes, Abhishek.
okay, great. So Ramakrishna, Karthik, please try to speed up a little. Otherwise, trust me, it's going to be problematic. You will not be able to complete the course in that ways.
Yeah, sure.
Please try doing that, and if there is any blocker as such, let me know. I'll be happy to help you guys on that. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So let's wrap it up for today. We are going to be catching maybe tomorrow. Thank you.